Welcome to the On Pace podcast. Today we are talking with Amanda Nurse from Brookline, MA. She is a pro marathon athlete with 20 marathons under her belt. She is a running coach at FLX Wellness and has an online coaching business, Amanda Runs Boston. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for doing it. So what got you into becoming a marathon athlete?
It's quite a journey I think I had to get to marathoning. I was a figure skater growing up. Had never run more than a couple miles at a time ever. Never even thought about doing track or cross country in high school or college. In fact, all of my roommates in college were track and cross country runners, and I had no interest in that whatsoever. I was a lacrosse player and loved the team sports in college. And when I moved to Boston after college, I felt like I needed kind of a new community, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the city. So naturally, I just put on a pair of running shoes and decided one day I'd go out and kind of explore the city by walking and running. And what I found is that Boston itself is just a very active city, and most people around here love to run, and the Boston Marathon is such a big deal in Boston. So I kind of quickly figured out that maybe I wanted to do, a couple of races just to kind of meet new people. And actually, the trainer at the gym I was going to at the time told me that, she asked me what my goals were. And I said, I don't know, maybe at some point run a marathon. And she said, well, why don't you run Boston? And it had never really crossed my mind. So I ended up applying for the Dana-Farber Marathon Challenge charity team because to run Boston, you either have to have a qualifying time already or you can run for charity. And so I ran for charity, and I raised almost $10,000 for cancer research that year.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I have a lot of family friends and family members who have died from cancer. And so it was it just felt like the right fit for me. And I found that running in that group and doing the training runs and getting to know people through running, I mean, you really can get to know someone on a long run. And it quickly became, my community. I loved those people. I knew that I wanted to continue to do that. And when I ran my first marathon, I ran a 3:26 and re-qualified for Boston. So naturally I had to do it again and again and again and again. And so I, now 20 marathons later, it has not only just become, a hobby of mine, it really is my passion, and it's become my life. And it's been really fun to kind of experience this journey, because I started, having never run more than a 5K only 8 to 10 years ago. And now I'm hoping to qualify for the US 50K team that will be competing in Romania in September. So it's a big change, but I just love it. And it definitely is a huge part of my life now.
Yeah, that's one of those things, the long distance community, like you guys get so close because it's just you're together for so long training, if you are training together.
Totally.
And you definitely have time to talk because you're not pushing too hard on the long runs, so you get to know each other real well.
Yeah.
And you're always like by each other's sides, which is really nice about it.
Yeah, we kind of joke about it too, like when you're on a long run, you're next to someone, so you're not looking them directly in the face, like, on a first date, like, staring at their face. You're just kind of next to them, so you're kind of just talking, and things kind of, come out more naturally. It's like almost like if you're sitting at a bar versus on a first date, like you might feel a little more like easy to talk to. So it's funny that we kind of always joke that on a long run, you really get to know someone really well. And yeah, all my best friends now are runners, and I've gotten a lot of my friends from other parts of my life into marathoning. So yeah, it's become, just a normal part of my everyday life.
Yeah, I love that. That's similar to me, like getting people into the running, and then you get even closer because you got them into it, and then they understand what you're doing and you understand what they're doing, especially when you're helping them first start. As you know, you're a running coach, so you've helped a bunch of people get that new like life goal, and it changes their lives, and everybody always comes out happier at the other end.
Yeah, totally.
So what was the progression to becoming a running coach? What inspired that?
It kind of happened organically for me. I was, just running on my own, had a run coach when I first started. And then my husband really is kind of my primary coach right now, even though he definitely he helps me a lot. He would say that I don't always follow his advice, but he definitely is kind of my run coach. I always run everything by him. So yeah, he was kind of the instigator for all of that. In 2015 I ran the Berlin Marathon, and I was hoping to break 250. I ended up running 246, and which was pretty close to a Olympic trial standard.
That's pretty good.
So my husband said that night, you ran just a few minutes slower than an Olympic trials time. Do you want to continue to go for that trials time and see if you can make it? Because this was only going to be about 5 months later. So I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I should try. It had never really crossed my mind, but I was like, okay, I'll go for it. So 9 weeks later, I trained hard for 9 more weeks after Berlin, and I ran this California International Marathon, and I finished in 240. At that time, it was like a huge deal for me that I had gotten, made such a pretty large, personal best just within a few weeks. And I got kind of a lot of publicity out of that. So, they drape like the American flags over your shoulder when you finish because you're getting to go to the trials. And like, I think a lot of people that follow me on Instagram were inspired by my progression, especially because I'm kind of the average person. Like, I wasn't a track star or anything. I just, found a passion and then really went for it. So my kind of motto has always been dream big. And after I ran a trials time and then competed in the US Olympic trials, I started getting noticed more. I was working with Adidas. I, became the captain of the Heartbreakers running team. I got a lot of people were asking me about coaching, and I was like, I don't know, like I don't feel like I have that much to offer. I just know my own personal background with running. And people are like, well, that's what I want. I want to be like you. I don't have a very fast time, but I want to get to something fast, and you've done that. So you want to help me?
Yeah.
So, I thought about it, took on a few clients at a time. And then, yeah, it kind of spiraled into, now I feel like I really know how to coach runners. I've been doing it for the past 4 years. And I think I've had close to like 75 clients. And a lot of my runners have Boston qualifying times now. So it's really been fun to see the progression for a lot of my athletes. And, for some of them, I've been coaching them from the very beginning. And to see their progression and their, joy of running come through, it's been really great. So, it kind of happened again very organically, but it's been a really fun journey so far.
Yeah, that's great. That means that you're obviously were doing something right. You were selling yourself short. Yeah, it turned out pretty well for you. And you're this is one thing that I also got into when I started first running, is really incorporating yoga, which I've been not doing as much lately.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired that? Because I know all mine was injury based.
Yeah. What inspired my yoga? So, I was always just doing, like a little bit of stretching. I was really enjoying yoga when I was a clinical social worker. So something I didn't mention before was that I actually got my master's in social work back in 2013. And I was a clinical social worker in a hospital setting for about 5 years. And as much as I loved working with clients there, I had a really difficult population. I was working with IV drug users, homeless populations. I was really mentally drained after every single day. And
Oh yeah.
so I found that yoga was like the way that I kind of escaped, and like, it was my meditation. It was like everything that my mind needed after a really difficult day at work. And I just found I was a much happier person after I did it. Plus it was really helping my running. So I was stretching more, I was having that mental space on my own. Like, I just felt like I was like doing the deep breathing and everything just really helped me in every way. And so I continued to do that with my running. And, eventually I stopped social work, and then I went into run coaching, teaching treadmill classes and things like that. And actually my good friend, Goldie Graham, she's a really well-known yoga instructor, originally in the Boston area. Now they live in San Diego, but She was the one that kind of instigated it for me. So she knew I was kind of in between, social. I wasn't really happy in my job, but she knew I was like, trying to do more with running, and she knew I liked yoga. So she said to me, like, why don't you take my yoga teacher training? I'm going to be here in Boston doing it. This was in 2016. And she said, why don't you do it? I think that you could really like do well at teaching yoga for athletes, because it's basic postures, the running community, athletes, and what they need, and it's such a niche that is really not that tapped into right now. So I thought about it and then quit my job, took her 3-week like immersion yoga teacher training all summer long. It was like 10-hour days, and it was exhausting, but it was a really, really cool experience. And I came out of that being like, oh my gosh, like this is what I'm doing it. Like I had to take that leap to leave my job and start something new, but it's been really cool. And now I'm really excited that I'll be teaching a yoga for athletes class at the Wanderlust Yoga Festival in Stratton, Vermont in June. And this is the first time I've been able to teach like a really large class at a yoga festival, which is a really big deal. I've taught classes for people like Runner's World does a pop-up during the Boston Marathon. I teach taught like corporate events like for Lululemon, and then I've also taught at university. So I teach yoga to some of the Harvard University sports teams, and they've seen big improvements in their performance just because they've been stretching and getting more core work from the yoga. So I know that it's working, and I know that it's a really important piece of training.
Yeah. Why exactly do you find that it's so important? Because a lot of runners, they like to pretend that it's not important. I know when I'm not doing my stretches and yoga, that just my improvement drops dramatically, and I just cannot keep up the high intensity training that I go through.
Yeah.
So
I think it's twofold, right? So I think a lot of runners or athletes in general think, yoga, it's like, it's kind of crunchy, like the stretching, like I can just do stretching on my own. I don't need the yoga. But what yoga is like the actual movements that we're doing in yoga, they're just ways for us to do the actual breathing techniques. And so for us, like, I think it's not just the benefits of like doing the deep stretching that's going to help us as athletes. It's actually all the mindfulness stuff that we do in yoga too. So for me, the biggest takeaway has been, and seeing this with a lot of the populations that I work with, is that it's really just like focusing in, like being mindful, being present, taking those deep breaths. Like a lot of things that us runners, we're super type A. We're like train. And we're not doing all the little things that will help us stay injury free, like, stretching, core work,
foam rolling.
Yeah, like just the mobility of our muscles. We think of, so one thing I like to talk about in my classes is like, you can think about your muscles almost like an elastic band. When an elastic band is really old and it doesn't get the movement, it gets almost crunchy. And that's what happens to muscles when we don't use them properly. So you want to make sure you have those full range of motion with all of those muscles, and that they're supple, because if they're not, you're much more prone to injury. And that's what, we're doing in yoga every day. So I think it's such an important piece of training. And the other thing that you get from yoga is things like, stability. My ankles were super wobbly when I first started, and I noticed little things like my glute medius were really weak, and you could see it in my running photos. And I say to people, it's interesting. You can really tell a lot of what people need to work on by their race photos. So if you look at your race photos, especially towards the end of a race, and you're like sagging in your hips, or, you're kind of hunched over with your shoulders, you can tell right away what they need to work on. And people are like, like, okay, that makes sense to me now. Like, okay, I don't want bad looking race photos. So that's how I get them.
But, I don't want bad looking race photos.
Right? No, like it's so true. Like the people that have really nice form are the ones that are they're well-rounded. All their muscles are, being used properly. And when you have something super weak like your glute medius, you start to sag in your hips, things all start to get misaligned, your knees start hurting, you probably start getting runner's knee or Achilles tendonitis. And it's like, really what you just have to do is a little bit of strength training, which can be done through yoga.
Yeah, that's you never ever see the top marathoners break their posture. They're always in perfect form. Never hunching over, never, they're just always in that perfect form. Is because they've worked everything properly and kept everything stable, and their body keeps up perfectly right until the end. Because I tell that to people a lot, like with yoga, definitely it helps strengthen your tendons, your ligaments, and it increases stability. And with weightlifting, you're going to hit those muscles that, because you're not usually going to go out for a 3 hour run at, maximum capacity. So you never know what's going to be weak. You're not going to know what's going to fail by the end of the race. And you need to hit those muscles and strengthen them before you get out there so they can keep up with the rest of your body.
Correct.
So some personal achievements. I know you ran a 2:40 marathon. That's kicking my ass.
Yeah, that's my best. I just ran 2:42:30 at Boston.
That's really good.
And although that's not the time I was hoping for, I really wanted to break 2:40 at Boston this year. I know that I'm confident that if it had been an easier course and not as warm a day, I think I would have run under 2:40. So, Boston, it's considered a challenging course for a lot of reasons. One, the weather is always a total crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get. On this day, particularly, we got every type of weather and pattern. So it was pouring rain on the bus on the way out to the start. It was super, super humid at the starting line and cloudy. Then it got really sunny and hot during the middle of the race, and then it started raining again and got windy and cold. by it was like every type of weather. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is the position of the hills. So I train on them every weekend, and I think okay, I can handle this. I do it all the time. But the thing is when you're running as hard as you are in a marathon and like really pushing your pace, by the time you get to the hills at mile 17, your legs are really tired. And you've gone through the downhill section of Boston, which really beats up your quads. So by the time you get to the Newton Hills, it's like a lot of us, we all pretty much end up slowing down. And I definitely lost a couple minutes there, but I was really proud of what I did, because I ended up coming in 34th overall, which was way higher than I was seated. I was seated 52nd.
That's
and
pretty
so
good.
that's all I could ask for on that day. I think I had a pretty good day considering all things that were going on that day.
So do any races come to mind as like the top? What's your favorite? Well, he ran Boston so many times, it must be up there.
Well, it's like living here in Boston, it's hard not to run Boston. Like I get super FOMO if I don't run Boston so one year I was pregnant, I still ran. Well, this next year I was 5 months postpartum, I still ran. Like it's hard not to run it when it's in your own city. And it's also I'm sponsored by Adidas, and they are the ones that put on the race with the Boston Athletic Association. So yeah, Boston is my favorite. It's just like you have the home field advantage here. Like I know I had my name screamed a million times on the course because I'm known here in the city, and it was cool. Like I actually finished, and this woman that was, I don't know where she was from, somewhere else in the country, and she said, she goes, "You're Amanda, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "It was really awesome running, right behind you or right beside you the whole race, because you were getting your name cheered the whole time, and I like fed off that energy." I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, it's like everyone here knows Boston runners, so it's cool when you get that. You get a burst of energy all the time." And then my other favorite is the Berlin Marathon. It's just a totally different experience. I've done it twice. It's flat.
That sounds nice.
It's always a fast course. The weather tends to be really nice. And of course I like traveling to new locations for races. So, yeah, I had 2 really good marathons there. So I'd say that's my other favorite.
What comes up as the lowest?
Well, this is unfair because I just had a really bad day, but even though New York is like such an iconic race and it's, put on by the New York City Roadrunners, which they do an incredible job. I had a terrible race at New York, and I want to go back and do it again because I think I will enjoy it more the next time. But I think of all the marathons I've run, that has been my least favorite. Just because I just didn't feel good that day. I hadn't trained properly, and it's my slowest marathon to date.
We all have that one bad day
Yeah.
out there, and it just sticks with you. But it's like those are the most important because it reminds you always to do the things you need to do instead of just being lazy and not doing it.
Oh yeah. I did everything you're not supposed to do before a marathon. Like I didn't really train much. I thought I was kind of like invincible. I wasn't going for a real time because I had run a good Boston that year, and this was in 2011, so it was like right when I started running. And I was like, I had a good Boston. Like I could do New York. Like I can do it on minimal training. I'm just gonna enjoy it. I wore like way too warm. It ended up being a warm day, but because you have to sit around for 5 hours at the athletes village before the race, um, I was freezing. So I was wearing like long pants, long top, like hat, gloves, and 3 miles into the race, I was boiling, and I was like so uncomfortable because I couldn't take anything off. I walked around the whole day before the marathon because I just wanted to sightsee with my family. Oh, that was terrible. I should never have done that. Yeah, I did everything you're not supposed to do. So basically, that's why I had a bad day.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well. I got a deep muscle tissue massage like 3 days before. Don't ever do that. It's the stupidest thing in the world. I thought, I'll heal up before this. And I did like heavy weights 2 days before that. Another horrible thing to do.
Yeah, nothing
And,
new.
and
Yeah, for everyone listening, don't try anything new before. Don't tire yourself out.
Yeah, it's weird. You like get yourself in the mindset of like, oh, I'll be okay. And then you get out there and you're like, wow, this is now I feel like a weird jelly man running down the street and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So what kind of type of training routine do you use for yourself, and is it similar to how you coach your athletes?
Yeah. So, kind of my structure for myself and my athletes is 2 to 3 workouts a week. So, that tends to be like Tuesday speed work, Thursday hills or tempo type work, and then Saturday or Sunday long run. In the long run, sometimes I'll do some bit of workout, like a ladder workout where I'll do, uh, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, back up, 1, 2, 3, 4, with equal rest time in between, all at marathon pace, stuff like that. So that's kind of like the kind of like the base of the training. And then everything around that is dependent on what your background is with running, how many days per week you feel comfortable running. Um, and so for me, I run 6 to 7 days a week. And I do other things as well, but basically everything else besides those 3 days is very, very easy. I'm talking like like over 8 minute pace when my workouts are more in like the 5:30 to 6 minute range. Um, and so really, yeah, really easy days. A lot of times I'll do doubles on days to break up the mileage. And I run commute to work. So I'll do like 4.5 there, 4.5 back. That, equals 9 miles right there. And it's like all super easy mileage. I think of those as recovery days. And then
Yeah,
on
I
a lot
like
of my,
using those as well.
yeah.
My
And then,
nice light runs just keep it real easy just for recovery.
yeah,
People are scared to get out and run on their days off, but I find it heals me up way, way faster.
yeah, for sure. And then I also have been really getting into bar three. So I don't know if you're familiar with bar three, but it's a really awesome workout. It's basically like bar, you know, people know bar. It's kind of like a mix between like yoga, Pilates, and like bar class. But it's awesome because they utilize they utilize like techniques from physical therapists, from runners.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. It's just an amazing workout, and it's really low impact. So it's really great for strength training. And for me, like, I'm not the type that like goes and lifts at the gym on my own. I probably should know more about that stuff, but I don't really have a background in it. And I'm always like the type that's kind of like weirded out about doing my own stuff at the gym, like that I'm going to do it wrong. So I found that I started doing bar 3, and then I was doing it like 2 to 3 times a week on my easy days. And I've seen a huge improvement in my both my running form and also like how strong I feel later on in the race. So I've had since I've been doing bar, I've had 2 really fast marathons, a 2:41 and a 2:42. And I feel better than ever. And my form in my running photos looks so much better. Like even at the finish line, my form looked a million times better. So I'm giving the props to bar 3 right now. That I think the reason I feel that I'm stronger is because like my glutes are stronger, my core is stronger, and I get a good stretch in that class as well.
Is it like explosive movements or controlled? How?
So it's broken up. There's like a little bit of like a cardio component, kind of like an aerobics class, and then there's like a core section where you do like all core work, like on the ground and stuff like that. And then there's a section on, I guess it's kind of controlled movements, but it's like you might be kind of squatting, doing like pulse movements and things like that. So you're like your muscles are like on fire.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, it's just like a really good combination. You leave feeling like really like you've had a well-rounded workout, which I love. I actually did it today.
That sounds nice. It sounds like balancing.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit too high impact with everything I do. It's except for I guess the long runs even end up being high impact and just beats me up. And I've been neglecting my body a little bit with the not doing my yoga, and been feeling it lately for sure. So I forgot where I was at. Is anything you would like to talk about or broadcast a message?
No, not really. I mean, I think, well, I guess one thing we haven't really talked about is I'm kind of known for being a mother and a runner
Oh, here
together.
we go. Thank you. That's
Yeah. So I don't know if you have a specific question about that,
no.
but
I was trying to think of because I was going to bring that up, and then I just got lost after you taught you started talking
no,
about
that's
that workout, and then I wanted to know what it was.
yeah. So yeah, it's been really interesting. I was kind of nervous when I first found out I was pregnant because I felt like, there weren't a lot of articles out there. There's not a lot of people talking about how to run when you're pregnant. I felt kind of alone in that respect. So, I turned to like there's a few mother kind of professional athletes that have kind of documented their experience, like Gwen Jorgensen. She's amazing. She's a marathoner now, but she was the gold medalist in the triathlon in the Olympics. Um, Serena Williams, Kara Goucher, like all kind of these really well-known athletes that have gone through motherhood and come out on the other side and been just as good for it, if not faster. And so they were kind of my inspiration for getting back into running after pregnancy. During pregnancy, I had a really hard time running. I ran the Boston Marathon when I was 13 weeks pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be great. Like, I can run a marathon when I'm pregnant. I'll be able to run until I'm going to give birth. And then pretty much right after that, I started having a lot of round ligament pain, which is really common for runners. So basically, it was like a lot of pain in my pelvis. And my doctor said, if you feel that, like, just, stop running and just do other things, walk,
Yeah,
cycle, whatever feels right.
kind of
And that
have
was
to.
really, really hard for me because I'm the type that runs, 7 days a week. I thought I was going to be able to run throughout pregnancy. And I had a lot of friends that were running all the way through pregnancy. So I decided, that's how I found bar 3. I started doing bar. I started walking everywhere. And then when I had my baby, I waited 6 weeks before I started running again. And when I finally got the okay to run, I was like so determined to get back at it. But I was nervous because I hadn't run in so long. So I was like, basically what I did is I ran 3 easy miles for every single day of December.
Mm.
And that kind of like jump started my training again. And I felt good. It was funny how fast it came back.
It's
I
funny.
felt like, you know, it's definitely a challenge. I was breastfeeding, I was taking care of a newborn at home. My husband went back to work like 1 week after